My family spent $12,000 on my brother and then completely forgot my 21st birthday. And the way I found out is absolutely insane. This is the story of how a single receipt changed my entire life. Have you ever felt like a background character in your own life? That was literally me every single day. But my 21st birthday was supposed to be different. It was a huge milestone. Instead, I got complete silence. And this silence was about to be shattered by a $12,000 receipt that would become my Declaration of Independence. You are not going to believe what happened. A lifetime of shadows, the pattern begins. This wasn't the first time they forgot me, not even close. But this time was on another level. My brother Leo was the golden child. Everything was for him. He was the sun, and I was just there. I'll never forget my 7th birthday. I was so excited. Friends, cake, everything. 1 hour before the party, my little brother throws a tantrum because he wants a superhero costume. So, what does my mom do? She literally leaves. She just grabs her keys and goes, "Sweetie, your brother is upset. We can have cake later." Later never happened. My friends showed up to an empty house, and when my mom and Leo got back, he's rocking this cheap plastic costume, and my party is completely forgotten. I cried, and my dad told me to stop being so dramatic. It was just a party. But that's when I learned the number one rule in my house. What Leo wants, Leo gets. Period. This pattern happened all the time. I won the regional spelling bee, a huge deal, and they missed it for Leo's soccer practice. They were 2 hours late to pick me up from an empty school. I learned to be independent because I literally had no other choice. I learned to celebrate my own wins and deal with my own problems. And if I ever tried to talk about it, my mom would say, "That's not true. We love you both the same." But their actions told a totally different story. The teenage years, the gap widens. Things got even crazier in high school. The favoritism went from quiet to loud. Leo was the football star. His games were massive family events. I'm talking jerseys, face paint, the whole deal. I was there. I cheered for him. But my thing was debate club, and I was actually crushing it. My team made it to the state finals. It was the biggest day of my life. And guess what? It was the same day as one of Leo's meaningless preseason scrimmages. I told them weeks in advance. I reminded them constantly. Their big promise? We'll try our best. Right as I was walking on stage for the final round, I got a text from my mom. "So sorry, honey. Leo's scrimmage is running late. He played so well. Break a leg." We won. I was holding this huge trophy, and all I saw were my teammates hugging their parents. I called my family after. Voicemail. They were all out at a celebratory dinner for Leo's team, for a scrimmage. And the worst part? They made me feel crazy for being upset. They were expert-level gaslighters. On my 16th birthday, the night I was supposed to celebrate getting my driver's license, the entire dinner was about Leo getting suspended. They were literally strategizing how to protect his future. I tried to talk about my driving test, and my dad literally said, "Not now, Maya. We're dealing with something important." Later, I found my mom and said, "It was my birthday today. Did anyone remember?" And she told me I was being selfish and the world doesn't revolve around me. Can you believe that? They weren't just overlooking me. They were making me feel guilty for wanting to be seen. It's an unbelievably lonely way to grow up. The build-up to the 21st. For my 21st birthday, I actually had hope. It's a huge birthday. There's no way they could ignore this one, right? Wrong. I was living a few hours away for college, and I started dropping hints months early. every time I tried to talk about it, they were completely obsessed with a big surprise for Leo's graduation, which was a full year away. This secret project for Leo took up all the air, all the money, and all their attention. A week before my birthday, I called my mom, begging to make a plan. And she told me it was the worst possible time because they were finalizing Leo's surprise. The hope I had just completely died. So, no dinner? I asked. I just don't see how, sweetie, she said. We'll call you, of course. We'll definitely call. I knew they wouldn't. Playing it by ear was their code for, it's never happening. I was about to spend my 21st birthday completely alone. The day itself. The morning of my 21st birthday, I woke up and checked my phone. 0 notifications. Nothing from my mom, nothing from my dad, not a single text. I got an offer for free garlic bread from a pizza place, so I guess that's something. I lay in bed, just waiting to see how long it would take for them to remember. Noon? Dinner? My amazing roommate left a cupcake on my desk, which almost made me cry. A near stranger remembered. At noon, I called my mom. Voicemail. I called my dad. He picked up and said, "Hey, can't talk right now, in the middle of something. Is it important?" My throat just closed. "No," I said. "It's not important," and I hung up. My friends were awesome and tried to cheer me up. They dragged me out and bought me my first legal drink, but all I could do was check my phone. Every buzz was a rush of hope, followed by a crash of disappointment. I went to bed that night, checked my phone one last time. Still nothing. They hadn't just forgotten. They erased me. And that's when I decided, this is the last time. This was war. The discovery. I didn't hear from them for 3 full days. My mom finally calls on Tuesday, super cheerful, and asks, "How was your weekend?" I was like, "It was my 21st birthday on Saturday, Mom." There was a pause. Then she just laughed. "Oh, right. Of course. Happy birthday, sweetie. See, I told you we'd call." No apology. Nothing. I was boiling with rage. The next weekend, I drove home to grab some books. The house was empty. On my way out, I walked past my dad's office and the door was open. And that's when I saw it. On his desk was a receipt. The total at the bottom blew my mind. Total, $12,000. $12,000. What could possibly cost that much? I picked it up and my world exploded. It was a down payment for a brand new 2026 car for Leo. They spent $12,000 on a down payment for my brother's car the same week they couldn't even make a phone call for my 21st birthday. I just sank into the chair. This wasn't just about a car. This was a receipt for my worth in my own family, and my value was 0. Less than 0. This was the proof. This was the evidence I needed that I wasn't crazy, so I took the receipt. It was mine now, and I was about to cash it in. The explosion, literally. 10 minutes later, they walk in the door, all smiles. Leo is with them, grinning like he won the lottery. He knew. Of course he knew. I didn't say anything. I just stood there and let them get uncomfortable. "Maya, what's going on?" my dad asked. I pulled the folded receipt out of my pocket and just held it up. Their faces went white. My dad tried to get mad at me for being in his office. I was like, "Do not try to turn this on me. You have spent months obsessed with this surprise. You ignored my calls, dismissed my plans, and you completely forgot my 21st birthday." My mom said, "Maya, it's not about the money." And I absolutely lost it. "It is always about the money," I screamed. "It's about what it represents. This receipt says he is worth $12,000, and I'm worth nothing. I called them out on everything. The forgotten parties, the missed championships, everything. The tears were streaming down my face, but I felt so powerful. You didn't just forget, I told them. You chose. You have always chosen him. I'm done, I said, my voice suddenly steady. I'm done begging for you to notice me. I am leaving, and I am not coming back. I turned my back on them and walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I closed it softly. Game over. I was finally free. And what I did next is the craziest part of the whole story. But before we get to that, if you've ever felt like this, hit that subscribe button right now because you are not alone. And leave a comment with your story. We're building a community here, and taking back our power starts now. The walkout and the immediate aftermath. Driving back, I felt this insane mix of terror and freedom. The second I got to my dorm, I ignored their calls and started planning my new life. Then I remembered something huge. My grandmother, when she passed away, had left me money for when I turned 21. My parents, of course, had never mentioned it. I dug through my files, found the paperwork, and called the bank. My heart was pounding. The banker told me there was $8,000 in the account. $8,000. It was my escape fund, sent from the one person who always saw me. Meanwhile, my phone was exploding. My mom was trying to guilt trip me. My dad was demanding I behave like an adult. And Leo sent a weak, "Are you okay?" I ignored every single one of them. While they were blowing up my phone, I found a tiny studio apartment online and used my grandma's money to pay the deposit and first 2 months' rent. Signing that lease was the most insane feeling in the world. I was finally in control. The journey to independence. The next few months were an absolute grind. I was learning to be an adult from scratch, but every little win, like paying a bill or learning to cook, felt like a massive achievement. Without all the family drama, I crushed it in school and even got a promotion at my job. Most importantly, I started building a new family, a chosen family of friends who actually cared about me. My roommate Sarah became my best friend. My coworkers, my friends. These were my people. I even started seeing a therapist who gave me the validation I never got from my parents. She helped me realize my value wasn't a number on a receipt. I was finally figuring out who I was, not who they told me I was. I joined clubs, took classes, and started building a life I was actually proud of. There were still sad moments, but they were like old scars, not fresh wounds. The family's reaction and setting boundaries. My family completely freaked out. I gave them the silent treatment, a weapon I learned from them, and they couldn't handle it. The guilt trips were insane. My mom sent texts like, "You're tearing this family apart." My dad called me childish. They even sent Leo to try and get me to come back. He showed up at my work and literally said, "Why are you doing this? It's just a car." Unbelievable. He just didn't get it. The final showdown was insane. They showed up at my new apartment, uninvited. The old me would have hidden. The new me opened the door and blocked them from coming inside. They yelled. My mom cried. They called me selfish and ungrateful. I just let them finish. Then I told them, I am not ungrateful. I'm just not available to be your forgotten daughter anymore. If you want to be in my life, it's on my terms. That means respect and equality. If you can't offer that, then this is goodbye. They were speechless. And when I closed that door, I knew I had won. It's been 5 years since that day, and my life is unrecognizable. I graduated with honors. I have an amazing career helping at-risk youth. I have a rescue dog, and my chosen family is everything to me. My relationship with my biological family is distant, but polite. We see them for major holidays. They never really apologized, but I don't need it anymore. Surprisingly, my relationship with Leo is actually better. He was forced to grow up. This entire crazy journey taught me that you have to claim your own self-worth. That $12,000 receipt was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it was also the best. It forced me to find my own voice and celebrate myself. If you made it to the end, you are a true legend. Please smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out this playlist for more stories just like this. And never forget, your value is not determined by anyone else's inability to see it. You are worthy, you are enough, and you deserve to be celebrated.
Meet Alex, who has been a black sheep of the Miller family for last 5 years. While his sister Tiffany was busy social climbing and his Aunt Carol was curating her perfect suburban life, Alex was living on ramen and caffeine, pouring every cent into a tech startup. To his family, he wasn't an entrepreneur. He was just broke. Then came the wedding. Tiffany was marrying Chad Sterling. The Sterlings are old money San Diego, the kind of wealthy that has its own zip code and a legal team on speed dial. This wedding wasn't just a ceremony, it was a high society pageant. Then the digital slap happened. Alex opens his email to find a guest list update from Aunt Carol. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive corporate speak. Basically, the wedding is too high-end for your current tax bracket, so please stay home so you don't ruin the photos. Uninvited from his own sister's wedding. While Alex is moving into his new corner office, the Sterlings are out here playing rich while their bank accounts are screaming for help. Chad's dad, Sterling Sr., is a legendary grustler. He's got the suits and the sneakers, but he's actually a professional at dodging bills. He's playing chicken with the Grandview estate, waiting until the very last millisecond to pay the final $205,000 venue fee. He thinks he's being a strategic genius by keeping the cash in his account for a few extra days. Alex is watching the internal dashboard at Grandview like a hawk. The clock hits the 5 p.m. deadline. The money? Nowhere to be found. Alex instructs the manager to prep the cancellation notice. But then his phone pings. It's Chad. The groom is panicking. He's begging Alex, the broke brother, to float him a $250,000 loan because his dad has gone radio silent. Chad has no idea he's literally begging the owner of the venue to pay himself. Alex agrees to help, but he makes Chad sign a loan agreement that's basically a financial handcuffs. High interest, short fuse, and Chad's future trust fund as collateral. Chad thinks Alex is his lifesaver. Alex knows he's Chad's new owner. But then, Alex goes into the Grandview archives. He finds a dusty file from It turns out the Sterlings didn't just buy this estate. They swindled it from a family of immigrants during the Great Depression, using some of the shadiest legal loops in history. The original family's name? Miller. Alex's family. This isn't just a wedding payback anymore. It's a generational repossession. Alex realizes that the museum property, Sterling Sr., is currently trying to bulldoze for luxury condos, also belong to the Millers. Alex picks up the phone and calls an investigative journalist. It's time to make the Sterling name trend for all the wrong reasons. Finally, it's the wedding day. The vibe is peak luxury, but behind the scenes, it's a dumpster fire. The original wedding coordinator mysteriously quit after Alex offered her a better job at his firm. The venue manager, Maria, tells the family there's only one person who knows the facility well enough to step in, the new owner. Alex walks into the bridal suite, wearing a bespoke suit that costs more than Tiffany's car. Aunt Carol nearly drops her champagne. "What are you doing here? You're uninvited," she shrieks. Alex doesn't even look at her. He just checks his watch and tells the catering staff to hold the caviar. Aunt Carol tries to call security, but the guards just salute Alex. He leans in and whispers, "Carol, I'm the one paying the guards. I'm the one who paid for the cake. And I'm the one who's about to decide if you get escorted out of here in front of all your high society's friends." But then Tiffany's phone explodes with notifications. The news story just broke. The headline is everywhere: Sterling family, a century of predatory theft. The article lays out the 1937 swindle and the current museum fraud. The guests, who are all about clout, start looking at Sterling Sr. like he's a biohazard. Sterling Sr. is in the hallway, screaming into his phone, trying to get the story taken down. But it's too late. The old money image is cooked. Then the real blow lands: Chad is missing. He saw the article, realized his dad is a fraud, and ghosted. He's currently at the newspaper office, handing over more documents to the feds to save his own skin. Sterling Sr. storms into the room, pointing a finger at Alex. "You did this. You sabotaged my son's day." Alex just pulls out the 1937 deed. "No, Pops, I'm just collecting the interest on a debt you've owed my family for 90 years. And by the way, the loan I gave Chad, it's officially in default. I'm taking your trust fund too." Tiffany is standing there, a runaway bride without the running part. Her fairy tale is a crime scene. Aunt Carol is hyperventilating because her social standing just hit zero. Everyone expects Tiffany to crumble. But Tiffany looks at Alex. Then she looks at the 300 guests waiting in the ballroom. She grabs the house mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," she says, her voice cold as ice, "there will be no wedding today. Chad Sterling is a coward and his father is a thief." The crowd gasps. But she's not done. "However, since my brother Alex actually owns this estate and already paid for the top-shelf open bar, we aren't going home. We're staying here to celebrate the Miller family finally getting their house back. Sterlings, you're uninvited. Get out." The Sterlings are perp-walked out of the Grandview estate by security, while the broke Miller relatives are moved to the VVIP tables. The party turns into a success celebration for Alex's startup. Sterling Sr. is facing a dozen lawsuits, and Chad is basically Alex's personal assistant now, working off that $235K debt he can't pay back. Alex sits at the head table, the 1937 deed framed next to his drink. Aunt Carol tries to come over and apologize, hoping for a job. Alex doesn't even let her speak. He just hands her a bill for the guest list consultation he did. "Don't worry about the aesthetic anymore, Carol," he says, "because from now on, you're not even in the frame." The wedding party was a vibe, but the morning after? That was a straight-up war zone. Sterling Sr. didn't just crawl into a hole. He doubled down. He hired a squad of high-priced fixer attorneys to sue Alex for tortious interference and extortion. They claimed Alex manipulated the venue acquisition to trap a distinguished family. They thought they were playing checkers, but Alex was playing 4D chess in the cloud. See, when Chad signed that emergency loan agreement, he didn't just sign for the money, he signed a data transparency waiver. Alex's tech firm, Event Horizon, now had legal permission to audit every single account tied to Chad's name, which, were all co-managed by his daddy, Sterling Sr. Alex's dev team spent all night running a forensic AI script through the Sterling family office servers. They didn't just find the museum fraud, they found a shadow ledger. It turns out Sterling Sr. wasn't just a dirty landlord. He was laundering offshore cash through distressed historical properties. And the biggest client on that ledger, it was the very same judge who was supposed to hear the Sterling's lawsuit against Alex on Monday morning. Monday morning hits. The courtroom is packed with local press looking for the trial of the century. Sterling Sr. struts in like he's still the main character, whispering to his lawyers that they're about to crush this tech brat. But before the judge can even bang the gavel, Alex's legal team drops a 500-page motion to disqualify. The courtroom goes dead silent as the receipts hit the screen. Alex doesn't just show the fraud. He plays a recorded Zoom call, legally captured during the audit, of Sterling Sr., promising the judge a board seat on the new condo development in exchange for making the Miller family's 1937 deed disappear from the public archives. The judge turns pale, realizes he's cooked, and recuses himself on the spot. But as Sterling Sr. tries to bolt for the exit, the doors swing open. It's not more lawyers, it's the feds. And they aren't there for the fraud. They reveal that Chad, the runaway groom, didn't just ghost the wedding. He'd been wearing a wire for the FBI for the last 6 months, as part of a plea deal to save his own skin. Fast forward 3 months. The Sterling empire didn't just crumble, it got deleted. Sterling Sr. is trading his tailored suits for an orange jumpsuit. Chad is living in a modest apartment, working a 9-to-5 at Alex's company as a junior analyst, his trust fund completely liquidated to pay back the Miller Reparations Fund. Alex stands in front of the San Diego Community Heritage Museum. He didn't build condos. He used his tech billions to restore the whole block to its 1930s glory, putting the Miller name back on the front gates where it belonged. Tiffany? She's the museum's new executive director. She ditched the social climbing aesthetic and started focusing on real legacy. At the grand reopening, a broken, bitter Aunt Carol shows up, trying to score a VVIP invite to the gala. She finds Alex at the bar. Alex, dear, it's family. Surely there's a place for me in the new Miller empire. Alex takes a sip of his drink and hands her a brochure. Actually, Carol, we're hiring part-time janitors for the basement archives. It's not very intimate or curated, but hey, it's a vibe. The Sterlings are gone, the Millers are back, and the receipts are filed. But wait until you hear about the other family at that wedding. The bridesmaids who were in on the offshore accounts. They thought they got away clean. They were wrong. Some stories end with closure. Others end with consequences. This one, it was written the moment someone thought they could erase another person and walk away clean. If this diary felt uncomfortably real, that's because it is. Like this video, if you believe karma doesn't miss, it just waits. Subscribe to Revenge Diaries for stories they hoped would never be told. And comment below what part hit you the hardest. I read every one. Because this wasn't the end, it was a warning. The next diary starts somewhere else, with different people and a mistake that looks harmless at first. Until it isn't. This is Revenge Diaries. And the next story, it gets darker. Till then, stay tuned for the next story. And thank you for watching.
The driveway still smelled like fresh rain, a scent that usually brought me peace, but tonight it felt like the smell of a crime scene. I stood there, my knuckles white as I gripped the handle of a single battered suitcase. In my other hand, I clutched the black dress I had worn just hours ago to my father's funeral. The porch light flickered above me, the same light my dad always forgot to fix, a small imperfection in a man who was otherwise perfectly calculated. But now, that flickering light didn't belong to a memory. It belonged to her. My older sister stood in the doorway, her silhouette sharp and unforgiving against the warmth of the home I grew up in. She hadn't shed a single tear at the service. While I was breaking apart at the graveside, she was already mentally rearranging the furniture. "Get out of my house and don't ever come back," she said, her voice devoid of any sisterly warmth. "You mean nothing now." The words didn't just echo in the humid night air. They struck like a physical blow. There was no hesitation in her eyes, no pause for regret. She was simply erasing me from the story we had shared for 24 years. She claimed Dad had left everything to her. The house, the massive logistics business, and the $44 million estate. I remember blinking, waiting for her to laugh, waiting for the punchline of a very cruel joke. But she just stepped aside and pointed toward the street as if I were a trespassing stranger. I walked away because I had nothing left to fight with. My father, Edward Rowe, was gone, and according to my sister, so was my future. As I reached the front gate, I felt a numbness settle in, the kind that happens when your entire reality is rewritten in a single afternoon. But even through the shock, something didn't sit right. Not the silence, not her sudden cruelty, but something deeper. As I looked back at the house one last time, I realized my sister was smiling. But she wasn't smiling at me. She was smiling at someone standing just behind the curtain in Dad's old study.
who else was in that house? I ended up at a small roadside motel off Route 9. It was the kind of place with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign that hummed with a depressing rhythm. My father used to joke about places like this when we traveled for business, saying he'd pay for a suite just so we didn't have to breathe the dust. That was the thought looping in my head. Dad. None of this felt like him. Edward Rowe was many things: strict, calculated, and even intimidating when a deal was on the line. But he was never unfair, and he was never cruel to me. We were a team. I had helped him grow Rowe Logistics from a small regional operation into a global powerhouse that investors actually respected. I was the one there for the late nights, the endless spreadsheets, and the high-stakes negotiations. My sister, she barely showed up for dinner, let alone a board meeting. She preferred the lifestyle of an heiress, the parties, the gold cards, and the emergencies that always required a wire transfer from Dad's account. It made no logical sense that he would hand the keys of his empire to the one person who didn't know how to turn the engine on. I sat on the edge of the stiff motel bed, my heart racing, and noticed the folder I'd grabbed in the chaos of leaving. I didn't even remember taking it. Inside was a jumble of old documents, contracts, and notes. But then I saw it, a name circled in my father's unmistakable sharp handwriting. Mr. Halverson, attorney. I froze as a memory hit me like a lightning bolt. A week before he died, Dad had pulled me aside in the garden. He looked tired, but his eyes were piercing. "Althea," he had whispered, "when the time comes, don't trust what you hear. Read everything." I stayed up all night scouring those papers, but it wasn't a contract I found at the bottom of the folder. It was a photograph of my sister and Mr. Halverson together, dated 2 weeks ago. If they were meeting behind Dad's back, was the attorney even on my side? Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my sister's face at the door, cold, certain, and triumphant. By morning, I was in a taxi heading downtown toward the heart of the city's financial district. The office building of Halverson and Pike stood exactly as I remembered. Glass, steel, and quiet power. This was where my father's most important secrets were kept. If there was truth left in this world, it was buried in a filing cabinet in this building. The receptionist gave me a polite, professional smile and asked if I had an appointment. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But my father did. A few minutes later, I was ushered into a private office to face a man in his 60s with sharp eyes and a perfectly composed posture. "Mr. Halverson?" I asked. He nodded slowly, looking at me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "You must be Althea," he said. He didn't call me Miss Rowe. He didn't act confused about why I was there. He knew me. I took a breath and laid it all out. "I believe there's been a mistake," I said carefully. "My sister claims she inherited everything. The house, the money, the company." I waited for his face to fall, for him to offer his condolences and confirm the bad news. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. He leaned back in his leather chair and laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, but the laugh of someone who had just heard something utterly absurd. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, his eyes twinkling with a secret I didn't yet understand. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a second, identical folder to the one I had. "Your sister was here yesterday," he whispered. "She tried to pay me $5 million to burn what's inside this. Do you want to see why?" The room went completely still, the kind of silence that feels heavy in your lungs. My stomach dropped as I realized that my sister had been counting on my grief to keep me blind. My fingers felt like ice as Mr. Halverson slid a thick document across the mahogany desk. "This," he said with a calm that bordered on clinical, "is your father's final will. Signed, witnessed, and filed 3 months ago." I stared at the pages, the legal jargon, the dense paragraphs, the endless clauses. My eyes blurred for a second, but then one line stood out as if it were glowing on the page. It was bold, undeniable, and final. Primary beneficiary, Althea Rowe. My name, not hers. My breath caught in my throat and I felt a dizzying rush of relief followed by a surge of pure confusion. "That's not possible," I whispered, shaking my head. "She showed me papers. She had me thrown out by the police." "How could she be so confident if this exists?" Mr. Halverson adjusted his glasses, his expression turning serious. "It's not only possible, Althea. It was intentional. Your father was very clear about his wishes." My pulse started racing so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Then why does she think she owns the world?" I asked. He gave me a look that carried both a deep understanding and a quiet, dark warning. "Because," he said slowly, "she was supposed to think that. There is a conditional clause." He flipped to the very last page of the will. "Your father knew your sister would try to forge a document," Halverson said. "So he wrote a version that looked real just to see what she would do. But there's a third person mentioned in this will that you've never met." I leaned forward, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. "What condition?" I demanded. Mr. Halverson met my eyes with a gaze that felt like a verdict. "Your sister was granted temporary control of the estate under one specific condition," he continued, tapping the page with his pen. "The condition was that she would prove herself trustworthy by taking care of you during the transition." The silence that followed was suffocating. In that heartbeat, every piece of the puzzle snapped into place. The cruelty, the speed of the eviction, the way she had looked at me with such utter contempt. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a failure. She had been handed a test of character, a test designed by a father who knew his children better than they knew themselves. She didn't even realize she was being watched. She thought she was the queen of the castle, but she was just a guest on probation. And by throwing me out into the rain, she hadn't secured her fortune. She had set it on fire. I sat there staring at the page, letting the reality of it wash over me. My sister hadn't just betrayed me. She had disqualified herself from her own inheritance. Mr. Halverson folded his hands on the desk. "Your father anticipated conflict, Althea. He knew that money changes people. Or rather, it reveals who they truly are. That's why he structured it this way. Control was never meant to be ownership." A slow, shaky breath left my chest. For the first time since the funeral, the fog of confusion lifted. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the successor. I sat there staring at the page, letting the reality of it wash over me. My sister hadn't just betrayed me. She had disqualified herself from her own inheritance. Mr. Halverson folded his hands on the desk. "Your father anticipated conflict, Althea. He knew that money changes people. Or rather, it reveals who they truly are. That's why he structured it this way. Control was never meant to be ownership." A slow, shaky breath left my chest. For the first time since the funeral, the fog of confusion lifted. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the successor. "But there's one problem," Halverson said, his face darkening. "Your sister has already started liquidating the company assets. If we don't stop her in the next 2 hours, the $44 million will be in an offshore account where even I can't reach it. What do you need from me? I asked, my voice taking on the same sharp, businesslike edge my father used to have. Mr. Halverson didn't hesitate. Proof, he said simply. The law requires evidence that the condition of care was violated. If we can prove she acted with malice and evicted you without cause, the entire estate transfers to you fully and permanently. I realized then that I had more than just my word. I had spent years working in logistics, where every move is tracked and every conversation is logged. I pulled out my phone. I had the voice recording from the driveway. Her voice, clear as a bell, telling me I meant nothing. I had the security camera footage from the house exterior that I could access remotely, showing her standing over me as I held my suitcase. And then there were the texts. I opened the messages she had sent an hour after I left. Don't come back. This is my house now. When I first read them, they felt like blades twisting in my heart. Now, they were something else entirely. Evidence. I stood up slowly, gathering the documents from the desk. Something inside me had shifted. The pain was still there, the grief for my father, and the heartbreak of losing a sister. But underneath it, something sharper and colder had formed. It wasn't just anger, and it wasn't a simple desire for revenge. It was precision. This time, I wasn't walking away. I was going home to finish the job. As I walked out of the office, I got a notification from the house security app. My sister wasn't just packing my things, she was throwing my father's journals into a bonfire in the backyard. I had to get there now. 3 days later, I stood right back where she had thrown me out. The scene looked almost identical, but everything felt different. This time, I wasn't alone in the rain. A sleek black car pulled up behind me, and Mr. Halverson stepped out, looking like a man about to deliver a final judgment. He was followed by 2 men in dark suits and a uniformed officer whose presence made the neighborhood quiet down. The porch light flickered again, a rhythmic blink that felt like a heartbeat. It was funny how some things didn't change, even when the world was about to end for someone inside. "Ready?" Mr. Halverson asked quietly. I nodded, my heart steady for the first time in a week. He stepped up to the door and knocked. Not a polite tap, but a firm, authoritative sound that echoed through the house. We heard footsteps, fast, confident, and sharp. The door swung open, and there she was. She had a glass of wine in her hand and the same expression of effortless arrogance she had worn since the day of the funeral. But then, her eyes darted between me, the attorney, and the officer, and her posture stiffened. "What is this?" she snapped, her voice high and defensive. Mr. Halverson stepped forward, his face a mask of professional calm. "Good afternoon," he said evenly. "We're here regarding the estate of Edward Rowe." My sister's eyes narrowed. I already told her, "This house is mine. The business is mine. Get off my property." Mr. Halverson didn't move. He just smiled. "Actually, we aren't here for the house," he said. "We're here for the $10 million in cash you removed from the company vault this morning. That's a felony, and you're going to want to listen to what comes next." "Yes," Mr. Halverson said, his voice cutting through her protests like a knife. "It was yours. Temporarily." The silence that followed was absolute. He reached into his briefcase and handed her the document I had seen in his office. "You failed the condition," he said. Her hands began to tremble as she scanned the pages, her eyes darting across the legal text she had tried so hard to ignore. No, that's not... This isn't right, she stammered, her face beginning to drain of all its color. It is, Halverson interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. You were required to provide care and residence to your sister. Instead, you removed her from the property within hours of your father's burial. You violated the core tenet of the transition period. The words landed like thunder in the small entryway. For the first time in our lives, she didn't look at me with superiority or disdain. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated fear. No, you can't do this. You can't just take it away, she cried, her voice cracking in a way I had never heard before. The same woman who had stood over me like a queen just days ago was now gripping the doorframe just to stay steady on her feet. This is my house, she whispered, but even she didn't seem to believe the lie anymore. Mr. Halverson didn't need to raise his voice. The law was doing the shouting for him. It was never yours, he said. The officer stepped forward slightly, not aggressive, but present enough to make the reality of the situation sink in. My sister looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Althea, I did it for us, she screamed. Dad was hiding something in the basement. I was trying to protect you from the truth about how he really made that $44 million. She turned to me then, really looked at me. Not through me, not above me, but straight into my eyes. Althea, please, she said, her tone shifting with a desperate speed that made my stomach turn. We can fix this. I didn't know. I thought I was doing what Dad wanted. You thought I didn't matter, I said quietly, cutting through her excuses. That hit her harder than any legal document could. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. I was scared. Everything happened so fast, and the money. I just got overwhelmed. You showed me exactly who you are, I replied, my voice calm and steady, and that calm seemed to terrify her more than anger ever could. She knew she couldn't manipulate a person who was no longer reacting to her drama. Mr. Halverson closed his folder with a final, echoing snap. Miss, you'll need to vacate the property immediately, he said. The silence that followed wasn't loud, it was hollow. She finally understood that she had destroyed her own future. But people like her never go quietly. They stall, they cry, and they reach for any straw that might rewind the clock. She sat on the edge of the designer couch she had claimed was hers, watching her empire slip through her fingers. I'll fix everything, she whispered. You can stay. We'll split the money 50-50. Just don't do this to me, Althea. We're sisters. I looked at the walls of the living room, and the same ones that had witnessed our childhood, and realized everything felt different. Not because I had won, but because I finally saw her clearly. As she was begging, the officer's radio chirped. We found the hidden safe, a voice crackled. And Miss Rowe, you're going to want to see what's inside. It's not money, it's a second will. You already made your choice, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her lips trembled as she looked at the officer. I was grieving, she shouted one last time. So was I replied softly. That ended it. There were no more arguments to be made, no more tears that could wash away the last 3 days. Mr. Halverson gave a small, respectful nod, and within the hour, the arrangements were made. It was legal, it was clean, and it was final. By the time the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the driveway, the house was mine completely. But as I stood there watching the car carry my sister away, I realized the part she never understood. The will didn't just test her ability to follow a rule, it revealed her soul. Dad didn't leave me $44 million because I needed the money, or because I was his favorite. He left it because he knew something I hadn't wanted to accept. That loyalty can't be inherited. It has to be proven in the dark when you think nobody is watching. When the door finally closed, I didn't feel the rush of revenge I thought I would. I didn't feel like a winner in a war. I felt a profound sense of peace. I felt free. I walked into my father's study, sat in his chair, and opened the final ledger. My name was at the top, and for the first time, I knew I had earned it. But as I opened the ledger, I found a small note tucked into the back cover. It was in my sister's handwriting, dated the day before Dad died. It said, "I know about the test, Dad, and I'm going to make sure Althea fails hers." Was this whole thing a game they were both playing? I thought the battle was over. I thought the $44 million and the house were the end of the story. But as I sat in my father's chair, I found a note in my sister's handwriting dated the day before he died. It said, "I know about the test, Dad, and I'm going to make sure Althea fails hers." My heart stopped. This wasn't just a will. It was a game I didn't know I was playing. And the next round has just begun. If you want to see how this high-stakes betrayal unfolds, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Press the bell icon right now to stay tuned, because you won't want to miss the next shocking chapter of the Revenge Diaries.